To the June 26, 2017 meeting of the Rutherford County Regional Planning Commission. If you would stand with us, please. Commissioner Mike Vaught will lead us in our prayer and our pledge. Mike.
If you'll bow your heads. Most gracious Heavenly Father, we thank you for allowing us to assemble and the freedom that we enjoy to do the county's business. We ask that you give us wisdom and guide our decisions, that they might be pleasing to beneficial to the citizens of this county. We ask that you be with our state and national officials as well as our local officials. Be with those that are serving overseas. Help your guiding hand to be with them. In Christ's name we pray. Amen. Amen. I
pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. You may be seated. Please call the roll, Gail.
Rhonda Allen, Jim Averwater, Lee Bogle,
Here.
David Jones,
Here.
Will Jordan,
Here.
Mike Cush,
Here.
Craig Lynch,
Here.
Chip Pinion,
Here.
Charlotte P., Mike Vaught,
Here.
Jeff Phillips.
Present.
We have a quorum.
Thank you, Gail. We have no minutes to approve today. Item 5 on our agenda are items that are deferred or withdrawn, and I understand we have none.
That's correct.
We have a pretty full agenda. Everybody grab a hold of something. We're going to move. Under new business, 6A, waiver request. Item number 17-4002, Howard Yergin, fire hydrant waiver for property located at 3267 Yergin Road. Doug.
Yes, Mr. Chairman, thank you, and good morning, Commissioners. The piece of property, as you stated, is located along Yergin Road. The applicant would like to divide about a 2.5 acre tract off of the subject property. Any division of land, of course, under 5 acres is considered a subdivision by state law, and so is required to follow the county's subdivision regulation requirements. There's not a fire hydrant within 1,000 feet of the proposed property, at least measured as the truck drives, as opposed to as the crow flies. The applicant has requested a waiver to the fire hydrant provisions. They have requested a fire hydrant availability study from CUD. The information from CUD, which is included with your agenda package, does indicate that a hydrant cannot be supported at that location. And again, that's in your agenda packets if you have any questions about that. Also, Mr. Alan Stemke from Consolidated Utility is present. Mr. Yergin is here as well. If you have any questions, we'll be happy to answer them at this time.
Staff have a recommendation?
Being that the hydrant cannot be supported at this location due to the water line in the area, I'm fine with that. Recommend approval.
Make a motion.
Second.
I have a motion and a second to approve item 17-4002. Any questions? All those in favor of that motion to approve, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposition? Motion to approve carries. Thank you. 6A2, 17-4003, Alan Lawson, multiple waivers on property located along Henley Road. Doug?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Just give me a second while we get back to this here. The applicant would like to subdivide approximately 4 acres from their existing property, which is 16 acres, and sell them to their son and family in order for them to construct a house on the property. They're asking for a number of waivers, as you can see from your agenda packets. The fire hydrant waiver request, again, which is outside of the 1,000 foot as the truck drives. Articles 3, which deals with the lots on private easements being at least 5 acres in size, and then limiting the number of lots on a private easement to 3, and then another regulation, Article 3, regarding private roads being built to county road specifications. This is a similar request to what was approved by the Planning Commission back in December of 2015. At that time, there was an existing piece of property. It had a principal structure, but also had a small mobile home on the property as well. The applicant had, it was his daughter, as I recall, but he had subdivided a small portion of that for his daughter off of this same private easement. This easement has been in place for some time. In the late 1980s, you can see a copy of that survey, which is on your screens right now. And the agenda packet materials that you have with your agendas show the area in question, really between, it looks like lots 5 and this area right in here is where they're looking at, where you can see the hand there on the screen is where they're looking at, kind of taking portions of both of these and making it into a separate lot for his son. Mr. Lawson is present, and we'll be happy to answer any questions that you may have.
Any questions for staff? Any recommendation, Doug?
Again, this is really not a whole lot different than what was done in the past. Now, by today's standards, we wouldn't really see a subdivision like this anymore. So this is kind of a last of what I would call a dying breed as far as this type of subdivision is concerned.
If it was 5 acres or more, it still have the 2 second issues.
Correct. Yes, sir.
Are there houses on the majority of these lots down through here?
The majority, I believe there is. Oh, we can turn on the aerial here for this one. A lot of these lots do have existing homes on them. I don't know exactly how many, but
I mean, if there's already a bunch on a private easement already, this is a family member, we try and look favorably toward that when we can. And with that, I believe that's in my commission district also. With it, I'll make a motion to approve subject to all staff comments.
Second.
I have a motion and a second to approve item 17-4003. Other questions or comments? All those in favor of that motion to approve, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposition? Motion to approve carries. Thank you. 6B, submitted for preliminary plan approval. Item 17-1001, Popular Cove revisions. 4 lots on 6.4 acres zoned RM located off West Sagefield Drive. Harmony Homes of Tennessee is the applicant. Doug.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Just bear with us a second. There's so many of these things that are open right now. It's hard to find which one we're looking at here. Yeah, let's see. There we go. Thank you. Okay, Poplar Cove. This is really just a reapproval of this particular subdivision. What has happened is originally lot 28 right here, Victory Drive, just kind of came straight down and then kind of bowled out.
Had an offset bulb.
Offset cul-de-sac. I can't talk this morning. I'm sorry. So what they've done is they've made it a more symmetrical cul-de-sac, which in and of itself is not a problem. The issue comes in the fact that they reduced the lot size here, and according to the subdivision regulations, when you reduce the lot size, that's a automatic major deviation from the original approval. Everything with this plat besides that is in good order and is fine. It's just this change necessitated them coming back to the Planning Commission.
Questions?
Motion approved. Second.
I have a motion and a second to approve item 17-1001, Popular Cove. Any other questions? All those in favor of that motion to approve, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposition? Motion to approve carries. Thank you. 6B2, item 17-1009, 12 Corners, Section 2, 40 lots on 18.29 acres, zoned RL, located off 12 Corners Road. RHB is the applicant. Doug.
Yes, Mr. Chairman, thank you. As you stated, this is 12 Corners, Section 2. The preliminary plan for this development was originally approved by the Planning Commission back in October of 2005. Construction of this particular section never began, so the approval has long since expired, which is why you're seeing it brought before you today. Utility letters have been provided by Middle Tennessee Electric. We're still waiting on the one from CUD. There's a couple other comments here. The source and date of the topographic information on the plan just needs a date on it. I believe it said it was County GIS, if I remember right, but I just needed the date on there as to what that was. Also, at the end of Saturday Drive here, being that this is going on to adjacent property, they'll need some sort of an easement around this temporary turnaround. Temporary turnarounds are required because it's over 150 feet, this segment right through here. So, but besides that, Michael, unless you had anything else, this appears to be good.
There was a few sinkholes we need to have addressed, a note or something about how they'll be addressed. That'll occur with the construction and the final plat as well. If you look at this adjacent lot that had a sinkhole conservation easement, had a sinkhole conservation easement right here, and it appears that it might extend into these 2 lots. Let's see. I think there's a sinkhole kind of straddling here. There's one here. And and then the suspect one over here. We just need a note saying they're gonna have a geotech look at those, fill those to standards, be inspected, and that's all we're looking for on that.
Those sinkholes that are being filled, will they be flagged for potential property owners buying?
Yes,
So-
yes,
so they'll know
they'll
there's
either
some-
be protected in a sinkhole conservation easement, or they'll be closed under the direction of, direct supervision of a geotechnical engineer.
Okay.
And I think there's another one, a 159, 160, and it's kinda into the road, as well, so we'll need to pay special attention to that as well.
There was a list in that note 11 on the plans, and I think 144 was included in that as well.
Okay. Yes, yes. Okay, they did say, okay,
It didn't have the others mentioned, but I was curious about those three.
Okay.
They'd be flagged accordingly.
yeah, we'll get those flagged as well.
Okay.
But- So
Mike-
it's just part of the
You said,
nature of Rutherford County.
you said temporary turnaround on lots of 150 feet. What's the cutoff there? 100
It
feet?
is 150 feet.
If something 100 foot wouldn't have to have it, or what is that
Right,
cutoff?
if we could get them to shorten that or do something different. It might be a little tricky with a pond on 122 if they wanted to shift it to the north or something like that. So we'll need to get a easement on that end of that Saturday Drive on the Douglas Roads property, or have the cul-de-sac pretty much all on lot 161 as a temporary. So, I mean, it's just something we'll need to work out with the construction plans or the final plat. It's, and the adjacent property owner if it's available.
Drainage good, Mike.
They have added 2 detention ponds. They've got, it's a little bit of a crown in the middle of the development. They've added one at 132 and 122, and during construction plan review, we'll hash everything out and make sure everything's working out. They did have a water table that we've asked them to remove, and they've added some inlets here, so we're pretty good shape so far. We just need to get construction plans submitted and review and move forward.
Did you receive the utility letters that you were looking for?
We're still waiting on CUDs, but we did receive Middle Tennessee Electrics. Yes, ma'am.
Mr. Chair, I'll make a motion to approve, subject to all staff comments.
Second.
Have a motion and a second to approve the preliminary plan for 12 Corners, item number 17-1009. Other questions?
Is staff comfortable with that, with all the,
The sinkholes, it's the nature of Rutherford County. We'll have to pay special attention at our office and also at building codes and make sure we get the right evaluations done, or conservation easements or whatever. So, I mean, it's just it's Rutherford County. It's a karstic topography.
And would staff comments also include the approval of CUD's
Yes.
letter
Yes.
on file?
Yes, sir.
That was one of our comments.
Other questions? Ready to vote? All those in favor of the motion to approve item 17-1009, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposition? Motion to approve carries. Thank you. 6B3, 17-1010, Marybeth Meadows, 12 lots on 11.03 acres owned RM located along Swamp Leanna Road. Brad Smotherman is the applicant.
Yes, Mr. Chairman, thank you. The applicant is proposing to construct approximately 12 homes off of Swamp Leanna Road. We did identify a number of issues, the vast majority of which have been addressed. There's a couple of, there was one structure in particular on these lots, it was an existing shed. We weren't exactly sure where what was going to happen to it. What lot was it on?
Right here.
Oh, yeah, right there, yeah. We weren't exactly sure what was going to happen to that. There's some other structures on here, they say they're to be removed. I mean, really, if they're to be removed, just a matter of extending another leader line to that. Fairly minor comment. We do also need a CUD's will serve letter. We do have Middle Tennessee Electrics on this, as well as a determination from 911 on the proposed street name. The name they're proposing wasn't the original name. This is actually different. They also had a different suffix. They had it as a circle, which this is just a straight road with a cul-de-sac that's not really a circle, so they have changed that. Again, those are, I mean, obviously before a final plat would be recorded, we would make sure that that road name is okay. The other thing on here, and I think this is more on Mike's alley, has to do with the proposed intersection, and I'll let him describe that. Yeah.
Let's see. Okay, yes, we had them tweak this intersection to be more of a 90 degree and have a tangent section. Our minimum centerline radius is 300 feet, and this needs to be tweaked a little bit, flattened out a little bit, and that can happen with the construction plans. But they've got plenty of room down below at the lot 14 if it's going to be open space to kind of flatten that out. But all in all, it looks in good order. They do have a proposed stormwater detention pond on lot 11, and they've got drainage easements that'll capture the flow from the lots and the roads to go to the detention pond.
One other comment I will mention, the TDEC office regarding the septic soil on the property had a comment. They were going to check to see if whether or not they could approve this lot, being that there's no soils on it. Now, I did tell them that this is an open space lot, lot 14, that this is not supposed to be for residential development, but he was going to check on that. Even if for some reason they couldn't, it's a pretty easy solution. It's just a matter of combining these two lots together. That's not a major fix, really. But I just wanted to bring that to your attention, that is something that the state had a couple concerns about.
Who's going to own 14? Is it HOA on that?
It would have to be an HOA, yes, sir.
Along with the pond.
Right.
Questions? Recommendations?
Well, if there's no further questions, I'm very familiar with this piece of property, and there's going to be larger lots, and I understand nice houses, so I'll make a motion to approve subject to all staff comments.
Second.
We have a motion and a second to approve item 17-1010 for Mary Beth Meadows. Any other questions? All those in favor of that motion to approve, please say aye. Aye. Is there any opposition? The motion to approve carries. Thank you. 6B4, 17-1012, Secker subdivision, 11 lots on 46.9 acres on RM located along Rooker Road. John Kent Secker is the applicant, Doug.
Yes, Mr. Chairman. This development, first off, will be served by sanitary sewer from the city of Murfreesboro. You can kind of see the sewer line coming down through here. There'll be an easement coming across here, which will supply the sewer for these lots. Because of that, this will also require Planning Commission approval by the city of Murfreesboro as well. A couple of things that we're still waiting on here. We do need our will serve letters from Middle Tennessee Electric and CUD on this. They did add a note regarding the existing fire hydrant on the property. Something I did want to bring out, this wasn't shown like this on the original plan. The detention pond area was just shown on this overall lot 12. You can see there's lots along the frontage here. Lot 11 has a flag right here. Lot 4 has a flag right here. And then the remaining lot 12, all this remaining acreage back here is lot 3. I'm sorry, lot 3, not lot 12. This is lot 12. Lot 12 was created because you're not supposed to have a detention pond unless it's on its own subdivision lot. Now, the issue that we're seeing with this now, like I said, this wasn't on the original submittal the way that you're currently looking at it. This lot is not large enough to be accessed off of a private easement. You can see that they're proposing a private easement right through here. Let me zoom down here a little bit, make it a little easier to see. They're showing a 50-foot access easement, but then they're changing it to a 30-foot access easement here. So really at this point, the way this is, there's a couple of waivers that are required. First of all, a lot that's less than 5 acres off of a private easement, and then second, the fact that this is only a 30-foot easement instead of a 50-foot once it gets to this point. It might be easier that way than only asking for one waiver to just make this a 50-foot access easement. I'm not sure why this was lessened to 30 at this point. The applicant is present. They may be able to explain that a little more detail. Besides that, let's see, I think, Mike, you had a couple of comments on it.
Well, is that 30-foot easement because of that gas line that's?
Possibly. I mean, that there is, the colonial line's right there, so
Yeah.
that may be part of the reason why.
This one is going to be a little challenging. We've got a lot of floodplain issues to contend with. Let me turn on a few layers. This is the parcel right here. All right, it's acting a little slow this morning. You can see the entire property is in blue in the 100-year floodplain, and there's a little floodway, but they can't use that for anything. So we're looking at a lot of fill on especially these lots in the back. So we're requesting that they provide us with individual lot grading plans, critical lot grading plans for all the lots to make sure the houses are built up and protected from the 100-year flood on that. And just a few minor things. There's an existing culvert, I believe, underneath the driveway that crosses Buzzard Branch right here, and they need to show that. And then I believe that's about it. So
Does 12 have a house on it?
That's
it going
the
to?
detention pond. No, I don't. It's
that's,
just for the detention
that'll be the
pond.
detention pond
All right,
itself.
Who's going?
They'll have to have a HOA to maintain that and serve that.
HOA. That's our favorite
Yeah.
scapegoat. So
Catchphrase these days. They're
They'll-
non-existent in 5 years.
Right. You can see the base flood elevations. It's 638 in this area right here, and there's an existing 632 contour. So they'd have to build the pad up, say like on lot 4. They'd have to build it 1 foot above that 638 to 639. So that's 6-7 feet of fill on lot 4 itself. So these are going to be some challenging lots to build on.
That's just for the house itself, not the entire lot, so.
Right, just not we don't do the 15,000 square feet anymore.
Yeah.
Just the pad, like 5-10 feet out from it to protect the HVAC unit and the ductwork underneath the house.
Doug, your preference is to combine it between lot 1 and 2 to have just one access off of Rucker, or you're okay with 2?
Oh, well, in that situation, I think what we're saying is like with 5 and 6, 7 and 8, something like that, pair the driveways so that they're closer together. Lots 1 and 2 down there, I mean, you've got lot 11 between it. I don't know if that'd really be an option for that one. But what we're trying to do is just minimize the number of cuts onto Rucker is really what we're trying to do. I mean, there'll still be that many access points, but if they're paired, it's really acting as one. You know, for all intents and purposes, it's really more 1 than 2.
Seems like there's still a lot of issues to be worked out with this one, from your perspective, or you feel like this is?
Well, I mean, as far as our comments are concerned, I mean, there's a few things, but nothing that really would rise to the level of any kind of a deferral, I don't think. I think, well, go ahead.
I'm sorry, we'll still need to see construction plans for the pond. We'll still need to see individual lot grading plans. That's why I was saying that this is all the properties in the floodplain, so each lot where they're proposing to build will need a critical lot grading plan.
But those are things that would have to be worked out in the future anyway. So.
The developer would have to start the HOA process.
Yes.
And that would have to be something that would be presented before a final.
Well, typically, the HOA documentation and the plat will be recorded at about the same time. A lot of these that we see that are required to have an HOA, they'll actually have blanks on the final plat where the plat or the record book and page is for the homeowners association documentation, and they'll leave that blank, and then they'll take both documents over to the deeds office. They'll record the plat, and then the other then just write it in on the plat is usually what they do.
So we'll be comfortable that that will be in place?
Yes.
When
Yeah,
it comes back, if it comes back before final?
Right. Yes, sir.
Okay.
The 30-foot, you got no problem with that, right?
Well, as far as I'm concerned, it doesn't meet the regulation. The regulation is 50 foot. If they were able to make that a 50-foot easement, and as I think it was Mike that was saying, Mr. Cush, that could be because of the Colonial pipeline. That's why they took it down to 30 foot. There was no explanation as to why. So
I have no explanation either. We can make it 50.
Thanks, Bill.
So moved.
I make a motion to approve, subject to all staff comments.
Second.
Have a motion and a second to approve. Item 17-1012, Secker subdivision. This will be a challenging situation for staff and for the developer and for this commission when it comes back to us to take a good look at it. All those in favor of that motion to approve, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposition? Motion to approve carries. Thank you. 6B5, 17-1013, Chestnut Valley, Section 2, 51 lots on 38.78 acres owned RM located along Valley View Road. Waldron Realty is the applicant. Doug.
Yes, Mr. Chairman, thank you. The preliminary plat for this development was approved back in June of 2006, with Phase 1 of Section 1 being recorded in July of 2007. Phase 2 of Section 1 was recorded in December of 2016, just a few months ago. The applicant has made some alignment changes for Section 2, which is why this plan is being brought back before you because of those changes. We've asked the applicant's design engineer to revise the alignment of Ash Ridge Road and between Cantor and Millstone Creek Road. I'll have Mike address that in a minute. Will serve letter from CUD also needs to be provided to staff. I'm not sure if we got that back. Let me see. No, we're still waiting on that. Really, just a couple of other minor things before I turn it over to Mike. From a zoning standpoint, the original submittal showed some of the older R15 zoning classifications surrounding the property. They have changed that. These properties up here are actually zoned RL, not RM, so they'll need to change that. They also need to update some adjacent owner information to the north of lots 1-4. Well, at the time, these were duplicate lot numbers, but they've been fixed. But we're showing some different ownership information on this side. Beyond that, everything else I think is on Mike's side of things, so I'll turn it over to him. Borrow that. Yep.
All right, got another nice piece of property on the north side of Valley View. It is very, very, very steep. And these lots, you can see from the tightness of the contour lines that it's pretty steep. And these individual lots will need to be critical lot grading planned up here on this side. You can see these large lots up here. They are planning to extend sewer, a force main to connect to the step system, so that won't be an issue for water or sewer. But just the steepness of the lots will require them to be critical lot grading plans. And another issue I had was like Doug mentioned, this intersection here.
Sets there.
Right in here is a little bit too acute of an intersection. It doesn't meet our standards. We'll need them to flatten this out. We try to get the intersections in a 90-degree angle, and then especially if it's on a major route from Valley View, you can see they can either go two ways. They can come down Millstone Creek and then out to Jefferson Pike, or they can come down Ash Ridge and over to Jefferson Pike. So we feel that this is not going to be a minor local. It'll be more of a residential collector route where a lot of traffic is going to be coming through here. So I'd like them to work on this intersection a little bit more. Let's see, just some other things. Doug's touched on that, and then Just some minor things like adding drainage easement between a few lots to break up the flow. We have a rule stating that we don't allow more than drainage to go across more than 5 lots, so we're just asking them to break that up. They do have a real tight lot in lot 140, and we sent them a comment on that, and they said they do have a building plan that'll fit that. But other than that, besides fixing that intersection, it's in pretty good order.
Michael, explain to me again what your concern is about that intersection.
Well, we like them to be in a more of a 90-degree coming at an intersection. This is more of an angle. There's a range. We go from 90 degrees down to 85 that we can approve. This is less than 85-degree angle.
This guy right here, you gotta hang hard.
And what's the danger there that you're concerned about?
Just the skew of the intersection. We'd like to see people, when you come to an intersection, to be able to see everybody and not have to look over your shoulder to see somebody coming from an opposing or a side intersection, side street. I think Mr. Minor's here from SEC. He'd like to address that.
Is that not 80 degrees, not 85?
No,
per the subdivision regulations?
The rules state streets should be laid out so to intersect as nearly as possible at right angles. The minimum angle of intersection shall be 85 degrees for all streets except local streets without the approval of the county engineer. In no case shall the angle of the intersection be less than 80 degrees. So this is going to be more than a local street. It's going to see a lot of traffic coming through here. So what I was thinking is to shift that cul-de-sac, Cantor cul-de-sac on this side to the east a little bit, kind of flatten that out and work on that intersection a little bit more.
Well, let me ask you, and I'm just talking out loud. Does the benefit though of having it shaped like it is also eliminate a straightaway where you just blast through there at 45 miles an hour through a residential neighborhood?
Right now, their stop conditions are these 2 side streets, so people are going to be coming through there not stopping at all. So we need that to be
two-way, not a four-way.
Sir?
A proposed two-way stop.
So they're proposing a 2-way and not a 4-way intersection. So traffic's going to be coming through there pretty quickly, and just based on our regulations, we need it to be a little bit flatter, more of a 90-degree angle.
Would a 4-way stop sign affect your decision on the
Well,
angle?
we could do that.
Well, and the fact that you have a cul-de-sac there.
I'd rather see it worked on a little bit. I think they can adjust that a little bit and make that work without losing any lots. It just needs a little massaging, in my opinion.
Personally, I would like to support the county engineer, because if we start doing this, say, well, this one's going to work at 80, next time we're at 75, and all of a sudden we start down the slope, we've got a rule in place. I mean, it's all on paper at this point in time. I feel sure you can tweak this a little bit and make this work.
Yeah.
Well, we're currently at 83.
83%.
So I mean,
or 83 degrees. Yeah.
Yeah. So we could bump that up a little bit.
Thank you.
But other than that, it's in good order. We'll catch a lot of stuff on the construction plan submittal. And like I said, the lots on the north side are pretty steep with these steep contours, so we'll need to see house plans from each one of those. And they have added a note saying that they are critical lots and will require critical lot grading plans.
Questions for staff?
No further questions. I'll make a motion to approve subject to all staff comments.
Second.
I have a motion and a second to approve item 17-1013 Chestnut Valley Section 2. Ready to vote? All those in favor of that motion to approve, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposition? Motion to approve carries. Next on our item is 6C, submitted for final plat approval, but before we get into that, I'd like to recommend longtime Commissioner Robert Stroop. Saw Robert walk in a few minutes ago, and it's good to see you, Robert. Back up here, you spent years and years and years, and you were a valuable part of not only this commission, but the community as a whole. Good to see you again. Glad you're here.
Oh, yeah, very well, but I have to believe that was not detrimental to me.
It was not.
Good to see you, Robert. Item 6C submitted for final plat approval. 6C1, item 16-2058, North Side Estates, Section 1, 60 lots, 58 are buildable on 49.07 acres owned RM located along Las Casas Pike, State Route 96, Oakland Developments is the applicant. Doug.
Yes, Mr. Chairman, thank you. Just as a side note, if you're following along on your iPads, this is the second of the 3 agenda files that I had to send out, or I had to upload to the site because the file as one was just too large, so I had to break it into 3 pieces, so we're on piece 2 right now. The final plat for this particular subdivision was approved by the Planning Commission back in September of 2016. Final plat approvals are valid for 180 days. If the plat's not recorded in that time frame, the approval does expire. The applicant is seeking reapproval of this plat for that reason. There's a couple of minor tweaks we asked them to make. They have made those. The only thing that they will need to make sure is that they show the fire hydrant locations before they record the plat, and that's one of our standard comments, really. So besides that, this plat's in good order. We recommend approval.
Make a motion approved.
Second.
Have a motion to approve and a second, item 16-2058, North Side Estates, Section 1. Any other questions? All those in favor of that motion to approve, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposition? Motion to approve carries. Thank you. 6C2, 17-2041, Ryan Cochran subdivision, 2 lots on 5 acres owned RM located along East Compton Road. Ryan Neal Cochran is the applicant. Includes waivers to the off-site soils and size of property off of a private easement regulations. Doug.
Yes, Mr. Chairman, thank you. Now, this is kind of an unusual subdivision. When we first looked at this based on our GIS, it looked like this was all the right-of-way of East Compton Road. When the engineering firm did the survey work, it turns out that at some point in the past, East Compton Road was shifted to the east and left a little bit of a remnant portion here in the on the map, basically, and that actually belongs to the property owner across the street. What the applicant's proposing to do is simply subdivide property from this 1.5 acres off of the parent tract. So what ends up happening is what we thought was just right-of-way to begin with, it turns out is actually somebody else's property, so a private easement right through here, 50-foot access easement, is required to get back to this lot. The other issue with this is that he's relying on soils off of Lot 1 to build his house over here. The plat in and of itself is actually in good order. They've addressed everything that we've asked them to address, and really, if it wasn't for the fact that this is actually a remnant portion and not actually right-of-way, then only a waiver he'd be requesting would be the off-site soils. So again, everything's been addressed according to our comments, and with that, we'd be happy to answer any questions.
Is that property owner aware of the easement?
Yes, he was the one that brought to our attention, actually, because he talked with the engineering firm, and then they all called us, and we all kind of just chatted about it.
They'll have to sign the plat.
Right, and they'll have to sign the plat. So as it turns out, the waiver's required. There's just 2. Again, the off-site soils, and then the lot of less than 5 acres off a private easement. A little unusual in that regard.
Are we okay with the soil site being on another parcel? I mean, we've kind of frowned on that in the past.
Well, we've approved. Well, the
approved
Planning Commission's
some, and
approved some in the past. I mean, really, as long as there's adequate soils on lot 1 for the existing house and everything, which you can see they have an existing soil system down through here, as well as an area identified for backup. This is the area under the easement right through here, not this right here, so that can act as backup, and then this would have its own. So it appears that there's enough there to do what he wants to do.
It's just a little neater and cleaner when it's all on the same lot.
Oh,
because
agreed,
you get
agreed.
20 years down the road and the houses have changed hands. If somebody goes to put in a pool or something, all of a sudden they're digging in the neighbor's septic system, or if there's a problem, you're over digging up the neighbor's property. I mean, I'm just a little bit uncomfortable. I hope don't want to start doing this on a large scale development purpose.
Recommendations? Questions? Staff okay?
We're fine with it. I mean, for what they're requesting, like I said, it really would just be the one waiver if it wasn't for that little remnant portion out there. That just was a little unusual.
Is the lot to be sold for profit, or is it for a family member, or do you know the situation?
Off the top of my head, I'm not sure if the applicant's present. Doesn't look like it. I'm not sure which it's for.
Need a motion?
I make a motion that it be approved with all staff comments.
Thank you, David. We have a motion and a second to approve item 17-2041, Ryan Cochran subdivision. Any other questions? All those in favor of the motion to approve, please say aye. Aye. Opposition? The motion to approve carries. Thank you. Item 6C3, 17-2042, Philip Vault division. One lot on 1.55 acres on RL located along McElroy Road. Philip Vaught is the applicant. Includes a waiver to the fire hydrant requirements. Doug.
Yes, Mr. Chairman, thank you. As you stated, this property is located along McElroy Road. The applicant's proposing to subdivide about 1.5 acres off of the parent tract, which would leave about 10 acres outside of that. Actually, just right over 10 acres outside of that. The water lines in the area are not able to support a fire hydrant. There's a attached letter from CUD within your agenda packets stating that fact. Besides that issue, everything else appears to be in order. This appears to have been updated, consistent with our comments.
Thank you.
Well, this is out next to me, and it's flat rock everywhere. So I move to approve.
We have a motion and a second to approve 17-2042. Other questions?
Gail, let the record reflect that I did not participate in the discussion or vote.
I was thinking we ought to defer this for 6 to 8 months, but
subject to all staff comments.
Yes, ma'am.
Thank you. Okay. Any other comments or questions? All those in favor of the motion to approve 17-2042, please say aye. Aye. Is there any opposition? That motion to approve carries. Thank you. 6C4, 17-2044, Stewart Creek Road subdivision, 5 lots on 6.61 acres owned RM located along Stewart Creek Road. Salem Creek Partnership is the applicant. Doug.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. The preliminary plan for this development was approved by the Commission back in November of last year. This final plat is consistent with that preliminary plan. We did make several comments on this particular plat. For the most part, seems to be in good order. We did have one question. They're showing the size of the water line in this area as a 6-inch line, but the will serve letter we have from CUD says it's an 8-inch. They just need to confirm which is correct and update the plan accordingly. They also need to coordinate the placement of step tanks and water meters with CUD. Lots 1 and 3, which are these two here, seem to conflict with that just a little bit. Other than that, Mike had a couple of comments. I'll turn over to him for addressing.
All right. They partially changed a note that we wanted corrected. Let's see, right over here. It says lots 1 and 2 will require a grading plan to be submitted to the Rutherford County Engineering Department prior to issuing building permits, but they still left the CUD note title. We just need that corrected there. It's just a minor thing. They did add driveway culverts for the lots 3 and 4, but they kept this note, 2 30-inch culverts to be used for future driveway. The 2 30-inch culverts are actually smaller than what will be required for lots 2 and 3. There'll be substantial size culverts. Let's see, there'll be at least 2 38 by 60 elliptical culverts probably needed for that one as well. There's a large drainage area coming across Stewart's Creek Road, and then get this mouse to work. Okay, and that goes across here and then to the northwest. So we'll need them to adjust that. And there's a large, what I was trying to turn on, come on now. Technology's great when it works for you. There's a large drainage channel that runs through here that we need them to coordinate with CUD with the step tank locations. Looks like they might be in that drainage area, these 2 lots here. Make sure those are pushed out of that area. Let's see. They need to rework the numbering on their lots. They took out a note but didn't change the numbers, just minor things like that. So, but all in all, with those few changes, I believe the plat is in good order.
These big lots, y'all better move those tanks out of your problem, because usually those
Oh no, it should.
lots are on tiny, and these are 1.5 acres or something.
Yeah, and this does drain back to the Stewart Springs pond, and it was developed by the same developer, so these will drain to that detention pond back there. Now there is a note I wanted to bring up. Okay, note 23, I think was numbered now. Geotechnical reports will be required for each lot prior to building permits being released. And the reason for that, you can kind of see on this plan, this was an old spoil area for Travis Estates subdivisions directly to the west. And it's just an old rock pile in here, so we're asking them to provide us with geotechnical reports for all this material that was just dumped in here. I think you can kind of see it back farther in history. Top 7. See, this is where it started to become a waste site. 09, I think it's a little bit more, but you can see the outline of it. This is where they brought the material in. They'll just need to have that evaluated before the house permits can be pulled and make sure that they're suitable building sites.
How much will they do? They just do the site for the absolute house? Will they do driveway areas?
Well, usually just the house where the house will go, and the area outside of that, just to make sure that the house won't see any substantial settling over time. And it's probably good building material sites. It just needs to be evaluated, possibly some of it removed and brought back in and compacted properly.
I'll make a motion to approve subject to all staff comments.
Thank you. We have a motion and a second to approve 17-2044 Stewart Creek Road subdivision. Any other comments or questions?
Did you say it was the same developer that Has
Yes.
the, okay.
Same developer, and they did get, it's a landowner that owns the pond on his, it's a farmer, and he did grant a consent to drain letter as well.
Other questions? All those in favor of the motion to approve 17-2044, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposition? Motion to approve carries. Thank you. Item 6C5, Maria U. Adams property, item number 17-2045, 5 lots on 3.57 acres zoned RM located along Parsons Road. Maria U. Adams is the applicant. This also includes a waiver to the fire hydrant requirements. Doug.
Yes, Mr. Chairman, thank you. This is another unusual situation here, and I'll try to explain why. The Planning Commission originally approved a 2-lot subdivision, which was for Lot 1, and then Lot 2 was the remaining property here back in January of this year. The applicant has not recorded this particular plat, and then this came in during our last submittal deadline, which you can see they're trying to split Lot 2 now into 5 different lots. Most of our comments that we had, for the most part, have been addressed, but the reason this is a little unusual is several of the comments we had indicated that Lot 1, of course, need to be circled because it's part of the subdivision. It also required the waivers and everything because there's no water line service here on Parsons Road. The applicant's indicating that they still plan on recording the first plat, Lots 1 and 2, and then coming back as a re-subdivision for Lot 2. To be completely honest, I don't know what that really gains them as opposed to just doing it all at one time. Taking Lot 1 out of this particular subdivision, several of the comments that we had really aren't applicable, but it seemed to me that the applicant could just kill 2 birds with 1 stone, do it all at once. They would have to update, some of our comments to include Lot 1 into the subdivision as well as the waiver requests and everything else. But besides, that was the kind of the unusual situation. Really, most of the other comments that we dealt with regarding just the lots 2 through 6 here, taking out Lot 1, most of those have been addressed. Looks like Mike had a couple of things he wanted to address. I'll let you take that.
We, let's see. Okay, we'll need to see the driveway locations on some of these lots. Like Lot 5, a 10-foot driveway. It's supposed to be a couple feet off the property line, and then there's supposed to be a 10-foot setback from the soils area, so that'll trim out some of the soil here and to a house location. Same with Lot 2. They'll need to see a driveway location and getting back to a house. We need to know how the stormwater detention quality and quantity will be addressed. Let's see. HOA will be required if drainage goes to an existing, I don't know what that note means. I didn't write that clearly. About a HOA required for the pond or something, but and then show just some minor things, but that's mainly how are they going to address the stormwater issues. There is a pond back up here in Colonial States. I'll take you there real quick if I can get this mouse to work.
Did that note mean that that section doesn't have?
There we go. Come on. Okay, this is the Maria Adams property here, and then this is a large pond that Public Works excavated to provide some more capacity in, and it does drain to that pond, but it's on somebody else's property. So without getting a consent to drain letter from this landowner, we need to know how the stormwater quality and quantity will be addressed for these new lots that are being created.
if they don't get a consent to drain letter, then they'll have to build their own retention pond, is that?
Yeah,
the way
we
that'll
might
work?
work with them to buy location on each lot, which will be challenging
Take a long
because of the
way to get
soils.
back out.
The soils area on each lot, because it's conventional septic systems.
Since it don't have one.
Doug, Mike, either one of you guys, there's a number of things that have been brought up. Is this thing ready for final plat?
I wonder how you're gonna use lot 2 at all.
Yeah.
Well, and quite frankly, let me pull that back up here. You're talking about that. We had talked with the state officials at TDEC regarding some of this soil right through here, and said that even though this is shown as usable soil, that, I mean, for all intents and purposes, there's really not a whole lot you can do with this large stretch right here, because it's just not, I guess it's the width of it is not wide enough for the for septic system, plus the fact of trying to get the driveway in there and everything. So this may not be able to be counted as usable soil, even though they are showing a lot back here. So that's something that the applicant's going to have to work through in that regard.
This guy's going to have a driveway all across his front yard.
And
Yeah, where's that house faced? You know,
It'll be
driveway's
tucked
all in
back
front
here
of
somewhere.
number 3. I mean, looks to me like that would have been 4 pretty good lots, but you're trying to squeeze
Exactly.
in 5 and making a mess, looks to
Exactly.
me like.
Yeah, yeah.
and why are they asking for the fire hydrant waiver? Because it looks like there's a fire hydrant.
Well, the fire hydrant was for lot 1. You're right. There's a fire hydrant about 550 feet here. So these lots are within 1,000 feet. But again, we were looking at this as, outside of the original 2-lot subdivision that was approved. We figured that this was just in lieu of that. But from what the applicant has been telling us, or at least their design engineers told us, they still plan on recording lots 1 and 2 and then coming back and re-recording, re-subdividing lot 2. Which again, I don't understand why you just wouldn't try to do it all at one time. It would save 2 recording fees and everything else. So, but the fire hydrant waivers were for lot 1.
Is that the note, no public water is available?
Yes, for lot 1. That's correct.
There is a
Right.
water line coming through the back. They didn't have an easement. We assume it's serving this lot that straddles lot 2 of the Skipper Smotherman subdivision. So once this plat gets recorded, that will become a platted easement for this water line for this lot. But I'll turn on the CUD layer.
Are there setbacks from a private easement?
Not from our standpoint, there's not.
I mean, just the
Just stay out of
There's
it.
only
Yeah.
so much soil area to use down there. If you get an easement for the water line, you get a driveway, and I mean, that's a pretty narrow strip down there anyway. I'm just wondering if there's enough to make it all fit.
Right. For usually they want to stay anything deeper than like an open ditch, 18 inches or deeper. They want to stay 25 feet off with their septic system. A buried pipe or a water line like that, they can stay 10 feet off of with their soils areas. And this is subject property here. There's not shown a water line extending down Parsons, so they're getting their water from this little service line easement going through the back of their property here.
So, and I missed, I'm sorry, I might have missed it. The water line will not support a fire hydrant?
Well, there's no water line there.
No water line on
for lot
Parsons.
1.
Parsons Lane,
For the lot
Parsons
1.
Road.
This,
Right.
this house here in Barn will be lot
But
1.
the,
That'll be
the
lot 1.
water line coming in the backside supporting 2 through,
There's an existing hydrant there already.
there's an existing hydrant there.
Right, a little bit farther up the road.
Okay.
But
That will cover
be
those lots.
These will be within range of a fire
Okay.
hydrant. This
And that
one
one already been
won't, as the
approved.
Gotcha.
hose were delayed.
Didn't have to have a fire.
House is built.
So should there
Didn't
be
have to have
a
a fire
plat note
hydrant.
indicating that that waiver only applies to lot 1?
Well, again, if they're going to record lot 1 and 2 separately, that first plat, then the subdivision we're looking at here would only be for lots 2 through 6. So it wouldn't have to, because lot 1 would just be all by itself. The note would already exist on the first plat that was recorded. But again, that was the question we had. Why not just do it all at one time?
I'm not comfortable. There's too many unanswered questions, I believe, for staff for us to consider this as a final plat. I'm going to make a motion we defer.
Second.
Let's see if we can get that drainage figured out
Yes,
before
sir.
it comes back.
We have a motion and a second to to defer item 17-2045, the Maria U. Adams property. Other questions?
Well, I'm just gonna add another statement here. We just did that in January, breaking into 2 lots. Now we're back breaking into basically 6 lots. I mean, I feel a little bit like we're being played here to some extent, you know, and I'm not comfortable with that 5 lots, that back half. It looked a lot better to me with 4. Personally, I don't like the way number 2 looks at all, so.
And the plat will require, the driveways to be shown?
And
Yes,
how-
yes, through the soils.
Oh, the soils,
adjacent
yes,
to the
yeah.
soils areas on some of the, like
And,
lot
and,
5.
and your building envelope, correct?
Yes, sir, right.
Just to add to Will's comment, that lots 2 and 3, if you look at both of those, lots 3, to me, aesthetically is ruined simply because you have a driveway running all the way across the front of that property, it appears. So it just doesn't look like a good plan.
And I think, can you see how much soil the lot 3? I think they only had enough for maybe a 2-bedroom house, so maybe 3. Oh, go down to the soils chart. Lot 3 only has 6,685 square feet, so it'll be a challenge to get 3 bedrooms out of that.
Okay. All right, we've had a motion to defer and a second. Any other questions? All those in favor of the motion to defer item 17-2045, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposition? Motion to defer carries. Thank you. Item 6C6, 17-2046, Heatherwood Section 4, 61 lots, 59 are buildable on 31.87 acres zoned RM, located off Florence Road. Gibson Development is the applicant. Doug.
Yes, Mr. Chairman, thank you. The preliminary plan for this section was approved by the Planning Commission back in October of 2016. This plat is consistent with that preliminary plan. We did have several issues that we did identify. Those issues have been addressed. I will turn it over to Mike. I know he had a couple of items on the stormwater side to address.
They have walking trails around the center retention, detention area. These are common areas, this long parcel here, but in a few places, and I'll zoom in to show you, you've got detention drainage easements, coming and then just abutting this common area. We just ask that they extend the drainage easement across this common area. They are proposing culverts underneath the walking trail, so just to make it all above board, cut and dried, we'd like that to be addressed. And then also they need to tweak a note about the responsibility of repairing anything in a drainage easement. So if this is piped through here and somebody puts a driveway on this easement or a mailbox or something in that that piped drainage easement, and we have to go in there and work on that drainage easement, it's a note stating that it's the responsibility of the homeowner to replace that item because they placed it inside our drainage easement.
It could be landscaping or anything.
Landscaping,
Whatever.
anything, any kind of improvements. A lot of times we'll see driveways squeezed in here because of the the large step tank easement, the water meter easement. But other than that, I believe they've addressed all our comments. So just a couple minor housekeeping issues.
Those notes will be made on those lots so that a potential homeowner will know what he's.
Yes, sir. Right. So it'll be recorded with the plat.
It'll be closed.
Make a motion to approve, subject to all staff comments.
Second.
We have a motion and a second to approve 17-2046. Any other questions? All those in favor of that motion to approve, please say aye.
Aye.
Is there any opposition? Motion to approve carries. Thank you. Item 6C7, 17-2047, Stewart Aaron Carlton subdivision, 5 lots on 2.6 acres on RL located at the southeast intersection of Highway 99 and Mount Vernon Road. Stewart Aaron Carlton is the applicant. Doug.
Yes, Mr. Chairman, thank you. This property probably looks familiar to commission members. This was the subject of a rezoning request to residential multifamily that was denied by the commission back in March of this year. After the meeting, the applicant didn't take it to the Board of Commissioners. He ended up withdrawing the application and then is now seeking to subdivide the property into 5 lots. The biggest issue we had with the original submittal was that the majority of the lots did not meet the minimum zoning requirement for lot width in the RL zone. In the RM zone, the lot width, which is measured at the setback line, is 75 feet. In the RL zone, it's 100 feet. So most of the lots didn't meet that. And after discussing it with the applicant and also their surveyor, they ended up losing a lot. And when you look at my comments, you'll even know at the time when I wrote that I figured that was probably what was going to happen. I didn't see how they could do that and keep 5 lots with the requirements the way they were. So they are showing a loss of 1 lot. So they are showing a 4-lot subdivision here as opposed to a 5. A couple of comments. For the most part, this has been updated to meet our staff comments. There were a couple of things that I talked with the applicant's surveyor about on, I guess it was Friday when he came into the office. This existing carport right here is attached to the house. Since it's attached to the existing house, this will actually be a principal part of the principal structure, not considered an accessory structure. So the setbacks in this area will have to be a little larger than they are here. He realizes that, and he realizes he can tweak that and take care of that. He also noted that on the plat, what he could probably do is the plat has to be drawn to 1:100 scale, but based on our subdivision regulations, but also the state TDEC requirements. Their soil maps are scaled at 1:100, so they do require a 1:100 map. But what he proposed to do was do an inset of this to make it a slightly, I guess that'd be make it larger, so it'd be a little easier to read. And that's something that he said he would do. So that's something as far as the revisions to this would be good. But he has lost a lot. He'll also need to trim out these are some old soil markings on here that just need to be taken out. The calculations that are shown on here actually are shown with the trim out area. He just didn't turn the lines off, and he realizes that he said he would take care of that. So from that standpoint, those were a couple of the major comments that we still had. Mike, I think you had a couple of things that you wanted to discuss on that one. But for the most part, from our standpoint, this appears to be in fairly good order.
I think you covered it.
Okay. And Mr. Tusar, Len Tusar, the surveyor, he is present. I'm not sure if, I guess, yeah, Brad, Aaron's here as well, excuse me.
Where's your stormwater area? Can y'all point it out, or what are we doing here on drainage?
Well, I guess that's one of the things we'll need to address.
Mark, to my untrained eye, this is very confusing. It's hard to tell what's what.
I agree with you totally,
Yeah.
Charlotte.
I can't.
I see.
I can't even tell a lot.
Is it this?
To tell you the
That's what I was
truth.
wondering.
Lot 2 goes from this pin.
Yeah, and Mr. Tusar did say that, because of all the items here, that it was, I mean, he even admitted it, there's a lot going on this plat.
Okay. Yeah, it said, had a comment, need to show post-development runoff is equal to less than pre-development runoff, otherwise show that, how you'll mitigate excess
See, there's
water.
the existing house on lot 1.
This could be a detention pond or individual
Yeah.
rain gardens.
This is lot 1.
To meet Rutherford County standards, how will stormwater quality and
3,
quantity
4,
be requirements to
but
meet for this project? So that's one thing we need to address on that too.
I can see
But
2.
I don't think we ever need to consider something for a final plat till we know how the drainage is gonna work. I mean,
I can see 2 and 3,
that's central to
but I
approving
mean,
a
3 and
plat.
4, but
There's a stormwater detention pond note under 15B, but it doesn't really tell you exactly where it's going.
Well, that's an adjacent
That's adjacent.
subdivision
Okay,
as
so
well. Yeah.
Okay.
I can't tell heads or tails of this.
I kind of agree with Commissioner Allen that and I was getting ready to say the same thing. It's final plat, and we should be looking at something that's final, and I don't think this is final, just in my personal opinion. And I'd like to see it final. Not just kind of dump on you guys all the time about, we can work this out and work that out. It should be done in preliminary. And the final should come to us looking a lot like a final. And it may look a lot better than it did before, but I think they've got more work to do.
Mr. Chair, I'd like to make a motion to defer this plat pending a number of refinements that need to be done on this so it's presentable to the Planning Commission.
Yeah.
Second.
We have a motion and a second to defer, hopefully bringing back to us what appears to be something that you guys feel more comfortable with as a final plat. Does that sound right?
Correct.
Other questions? All those in favor of the motion to defer item 17-2047, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposition? Motion to defer carries. Thank you. Item 6D, submitted for site plan approval, 61-17-3001, Murfreesboro Self-Storage. This is for revisions, new construction of 24,700 square feet of planned development space, which are mini warehouses located on 5 acres, zoned PUD, located along Franklin Road, State Route 96. James and Beverly DeLong are the applicants. Doug.
Excuse me. Yes, Mr. Chairman, thank you. This site plan, again, probably looks familiar to the commission. This was originally approved by the Planning Commission back in April of this year. The applicant contacted staff roughly about a month or so ago and asked about the possibility of changing the sizes of some of the buildings. Specifically, it's really in relation to this building A right here. The original alignment of A as far as the size and everything wasn't going to work as well as the applicant had hoped that it would. So they asked for the possibility if they could take this back through, or if they could make the changes that need to be made as far as size is concerned. As far as the actual change in the size, I told them, I said, I don't really have that much of an issue with that. For the most part, it's not changing just a whole lot. The problem is it's changing enough that it's more than what we can approve administratively. If the total lot or building area, excuse me, had actually decreased, you wouldn't have to see this again. But the building area actually increased by a couple thousand, I think it was like 3,000 square feet, or yeah, by about 2,952 square feet, which we're allowed to approve floor area changes administratively if they're less than 5%. However, this goes outside of that. So that's why it's being brought back before you today. Also, you'll notice that there was some discussion about the size or the location of the water line, excuse me. It wasn't across the property originally. You can see it kind of comes into the property and back out. This is the actual location of the water line that's existing in that area. So that did necessitate some changes to the stormwater design. For the most part, most of the comments that we have been addressed. I know Mike's got a few. I'll let him take over here in just a moment. One of the comments that we had was the original site plan that was submitted with the, well, just a few weeks ago, the amended plan, had a page in there for an alternate landscape plan. When I discussed that with the applicant and with the applicant's design engineer, the issue that was at the central issue there wasn't so much that they were seeking alternate methods of compliance. It's just there was more material there than was required. So essentially what I told the applicant was, if all you're wanting to do is reduce the amount of plantings to what's permitted in our code, that's not an alternate plan, that's just a change to the landscape plan. An alternate landscape plan requires submitted documentation as to why you're asking it. We usually see those in situations where there's a lot of rock. It's not practical to put landscaping in because of topography issues, again, issues with the soil or lack thereof, those kind of things. This really had nothing to do with that. There just was more material on there than what really was required to be on there. So in that regard, that item kind of worked itself out because it ended up not being an alternate landscape plan. I still think there's some tweaking that needs to be done to the landscape plan, but that's something that we can do administratively. That's not something that the Planning Commission really needs to get involved with necessarily. A lot of that was one of the big issues we had. There were a couple of other minor things that we had from a planning standpoint, at least, about showing the 6-inch CUD water line. They do show it on Deer Run Road now, which is down Deer Run, but they didn't show the size of it, so we just asked them to label the size. Another issue has to deal with this gate that they're proposing, and both Mike and I have had some discussions on this. The way that they proposed this gate now, it's a cantilevered gate, so it's going to slide on rails, essentially. You know, it's not going to open up. It's going to kind of slide. Right now, they're showing it sliding, and it's going to be over the detention area and this easement area as well, the CUD easement line. Being that the easement is right here with the water line, we just think it might be a better option and possibly redesign this to show the cantilever gate go this way down this existing landscape area right through here. That might be a better option than what they're showing on here. That was one of the bigger issues that we had. I know Mike has several things as well, so I'll turn it over to him.
Okay. Does it have to be that type gate, or can it be a regular?
That's just what they were proposing, a cantilever gate. But if you look at, let's see if I can go to the grading. If you look at the grading sheet, the gate's going to be situated in this area right here, and 30-foot wide would be, hanging up over this detention pond area here. So it would require an extremely large column to hold that gate up, being suspended over air like that. So I think what Doug and I are trying to think is that, where can they reconfigure that to have that gate slide maybe across this island, but it would be tricky with this water line right there, even that gate. So that's something we'll need to get them to look at for us. The detention pond is going to need some coordination with CUD over the depth of the water line. They are showing some proposed grading over the existing water line. We don't want them to uncover. This mouse hates me, I'm sorry. We don't want them to uncover or remove the proper depth over the water line, so that's something that we'll have to work out with CUD on that, and this drain coming down, make sure there's not a conflict there. Let's see. This we need some tweaking with the pond. There's a trench. They're showing these flow arrows with a lot of water coming out towards Franklin Highway. They are showing a trench drain right here, but it's not connected to anything. It's not dumping into the. I need a laser pointer. Just go out and point at everybody's screen, I think. So it's not connecting anything. We'll need them to fix that.
Trench drain would be just a trench.
Just a trench. Well, grate or something. Grate across
Either
it.
way.
Right, but it's got to be connected to the pond.
Yeah, it should drain back into the pond.
They could move it up farther in the driveway. TDOT usually doesn't allow additional water running off into the roadway, and they usually have a note on the plan saying the pre-development flow for a 50-year storm meets the post-development flow for a 50-year storm, so they're not running any additional water onto them. This existing pond is actually a mapped wetland, so we'll have to get them to address that. I think it's small enough they won't need mitigation, but they will need some coordination with TDEC on that. Let's see what else. And just a few things like 4-bay designs for the pond, energy dissipation for the pond, details for those items. Let's see. And I believe that's all I had for that. So just some more fine tuning of the plan and working with the utilities. With some grading operations going on in this area, like I said, we don't want to uncover too much of that water line and leave the water line susceptible to freezing.
I didn't realize we could have a water line under a detention area. You say we can, I guess we can.
Well, I've done it before in my previous career. As long as they can get to it and work on it, and maintain it. It's CUD's water line. It's their easement.
Took for granted they had an easement. I didn't know we could put something else in their easement such as that. My main question is, this is the PUD, and the PUD comes pretty much set in stone, and now we're adding 2,900 foot of building. Is that not a variation from the original?
Well, the original PUD, yeah, the PUD booklet didn't actually call out specific sizes. It did show the buildings. Now, what they're showing really isn't a deviation. The buildings are still where they were proposed to be. So from that standpoint, and that's actually a discussion that the applicant and I got into, because at first she didn't think she would even have to come back to the planning commission since the sizes weren't really mentioned in the plan booklet anywhere. But I said, well, that's really not the issue. The issue is the size that was approved originally on the site plan. But the buildings, locations, and setbacks and everything else that they're proposing, nothing has changed in that regard.
There's a lot of opposition to this on Baltimore Road there, was it not?
Yes, there was. Yeah.
Oh, and then we also, we also need to work with the fire department. They are showing a truck turning template in here with the new building configuration, but they're not, you know, going between a couple of the aisles and around. We need to work with the fire department and make sure that they can get their fire truck or a moving truck or whatever through these tight configurations, and also get say the gate is closed, the business is closed. Can a truck turn around without having to back into Franklin Road? So we'll need to work on that a little bit.
On I'm sorry, on page 2 of the plat, if you go just below the house, there's it's labeled proposed gate for future access. Is that just access from their future phase development? It's not access from Deer Run Road, correct?
Correct. That'll be for this additional future phase in this area.
And then while you're circling that, are we going to allow those buildings to remain labeled future phase when they're sitting on top of field lines?
That's why they identified this area up front by the driveway, and this mouse is not liking me anymore. Right here. So once they start this phase, they'll have to move their septic system to this area.
Is there buffering on the landscape plan for Baltimore Road on the Baltimore side?
There is. Go ahead and. Well, they're actually going to.
You better drive. It doesn't like me
for some reason. Let's see. Oop, back one.
Okay.
They're actually using the backs of the building. You know, these will be kind of dressed up a little bit more. The back of this building, this will act as a wall, you know, as a solid visual screen, as well as some landscaping along here, along Baltimore Road.
Okay.
So yes, that they will have to do that. Now they're proposing to use a lot of these as tree credits. They can use, I mean, you are permitted to do that. Again, the landscape plan is still, I think, kind of a work in progress. I know that the applicant had some issues with what was being proposed, and we'll work through that, but we'll make sure that it meets our regulations as far as screening and landscaping.
Doug, does staff have, to ask Craig a question earlier, there were a lot of opposition for this rezoning.
Yes.
Both at this planning commission and at the full county commission, both. And I feel, personally, I feel a certain obligation to the residents out there to make sure that this is the best plan that it can be to satisfy some of that opposition. This piece of property we felt like deserved consideration for this. Is it ready? Are we ready to approve this, or do you want to take more time to look at it, or are we ready to go, and are you guys ready to make all those adjustments that you've talked about?
Well, like I said, the landscaping is something I think we can handle at a staff level. I think there is still some unknown about that gate. I think that's one of the bigger things, and as far as working with the utility for the grading and things that they have to do, especially that their detention area is above, I guess, the water line design. So, I mean, those are the issues that really, I guess, give me more pause than the.
So if we approve the site plan, we'd still have to work through those issues before they could even start the
That's
building
correct.
process.
Before I'll issue a grading permit, they've got to have everything addressed: the pond, the gate, the landscape, and trench drain. Yes, sir. Everything. So
you guys are kind of okay with the site plan?
it's got some issues. We're going to have to work with CUD on the cover over the pipe. the water line, 6-inch water line, you know, some relocating utility. You can see the electrical line running pretty much north and south of the site. That there's a pole right in the middle. They'll have to coordinate with that with the electric department. They are showing some underground electrical lines that need to be addressed by the utility owner. Will those need to be rerouted? Things like that.
Yeah, I agree to the sensitivity of this whole thing we've been looked at for several months needs to be right before I'll sign off on or approve it. So, Mr. Chairman, I'll make a motion to defer.
Second.
Is the staff okay with that?
Yes, sir.
That's fine.
Okay. We have a motion to defer and work out some of the issues that staff is concerned about and some of us are concerned about as well. Any other questions or comments on that?
Yeah, go ahead. I have one too. Go ahead, Jim.
I have, a question and a comment, Doug and Mike both. Perhaps this is an unusual situation with so many items on the agenda this week, but shouldn't these applications have more of these things addressed with you guys? If you guys have concerns about these, shouldn't these be addressed before they're even asked to be put on the agenda? Or are these guys saying, put me on the agenda and we'll figure it out on the fly as we go? I mean, it just seems like we're seeing an awful lot of that lately.
With the nature of our review cycle, we get essentially 2 chances to look at the site plans, and we only have a chance to give them comments, 1 round of comments in between the submittal date and their meeting date. So there's a short time that we give them comments. They may or may not address all of them. Some of them we can work out. Some of them need some more time, and sometimes they do say, "Hey, I want to be on this agenda."
I just feel like everything should be addressed. I mean, if it doesn't meet the regulations, why is it here?
Other than something we bring up in the meeting.
Exactly.
And
if they brought up something, then it ought to be addressed prior to it coming to the meeting.
And there are times, I mean, I think we saw that a little earlier in one of the preliminary plans where sometimes the design engineer or the applicant doesn't agree with what staff is saying. We'll say it needs to be updated per this, and they'll say, no, we feel this is good enough. And then, at some point, who makes the planning commission has to make the decision at that point. We'll state why we don't feel it meets the requirement as stated, and they try to state why they feel it does. So we do run into that as well from time to time.
There are deadlines, and everybody knows when deadlines are to turn the papers in. And I know that's when everybody comes at noon or whatever that day is to get in whatever meeting. And you guys are in a crunch to get through it all and get back to them and all. But don't be afraid, in my opinion, to flex your muscle a little bit and say this isn't ready and push back.
Yeah, I think you have the authority to reject putting something on the agenda. I did have a question about Building A. You said that this was coming back because of the increased size
Yes.
of that, or there's a change layout. This is one of those situations where I'd like to see what was originally planned. We talked about maybe doing like some sort of superimposed image of what was it and what is it now. That's one of those things that would help me.
Okay, we can do that.
I have.
When
go ahead.
When this comes back, I would like a rep or a letter or something from CUD. That's a little concerning to me to put the retention pond over the CUD right away. I just want to make sure they're good with it. They understand what's going on.
Perhaps the final comment on this particular case is when Doug mentioned early regarding the owner's request to do an alternate, which Doug defined as really not an alternate, but a change to the landscaping, raised a little bit of a red flag to me, which I want to chat about. This was a very sensitive case that we went through multiple meeting discussion, and the neighborhood was very passionate and prepared about their feelings. I just want to make sure that staff perhaps needs to do due diligence in reviewing the full commission meeting minutes or transcripts, that perhaps during the negotiation between neighbors and owner, that perhaps maybe the owner didn't overpromise some buffering in terms of landscaping, that maybe now, I'm not suggesting this is what's happening, but maybe they promise something now that they're trying to peel back a little bit with some standard landscaping, but maybe they promised more to get approved. I'm not saying that's happened, but that's worth maybe an investigation.
Yes, sir. We can do that.
Because
As I said earlier, I thought PUDs were set in stone. This is exactly what you're getting.
Yeah.
And I didn't catch it when it went through. It didn't have the size of the buildings on the map. And now we're adjusting size of buildings, and now we're talking about variations to buffering as you're referring to it.
Yeah.
That's getting away from PUDs. I mean, that's the way I've always been able to justify a PUD or tell it to the neighbors out there. This is what you're getting. And now we're starting to play with it after the fact. So
Yeah.
I'm very uncomfortable.
Yeah.
messing with a PUD.
The deferral is probably the best thing for us to do, and there were certain assurances made, especially before the county commission, that heard all of the objections, that said all of these things will be addressed at the site plan, and those things are not addressed. So I don't think the county commission would have fulfilled its obligations, in this commission as well, but the county commission would have fulfilled its obligation without seeing those things in the final, and this is the final. So the motion to defer, in your chair's opinion, is the proper thing to do, and let us take a little further look at this. Okay, we've got a motion to defer and a second. Any other questions? All those in favor of the motion to defer, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposition?
Try using that.
Motion to defer carries. Thank you. Thanks, Will. 6D2 17-3002, Alan Wildcheck property, tract 2, new construction of 20,000 square feet of light industrial space on 6 acres, zoned LI, located along Franklin Road, State Route 96. Andrew J. Wildcheck is the applicant. Doug.
Yes, Mr. Chairman, thank you. This site plan was originally to be on the Planning Commission's February 27th, 2017 agenda, but was removed prior to the meeting from actually the applicant's design engineer had sent us an email regarding that. We still had a number of comments, although the comments that we originally sent, a lot of those had been addressed. This next review that we did, there's still a few outstanding items. One of them regarding the site lighting. If there is to be site lighting, they will need to submit a photometric plan. Currently, they have not submitted one. They really don't have any idea as far as what exactly is going to be used in these buildings. They're more speculative for purposes of this meeting, which, I mean, that's part of it. I understand that. But if they are going to have site lighting before we'll issue any kind of a permit for them to move forward, they'll need to go ahead and have a photometric plan to us. Some of these items here are also more engineering related from our standpoint. I think that was the big one that they had. So some of these are yours.
Okay. All right. The state requires sediment trap or basins per their regulations, and we just need to make sure it's shown on the plan, the temporary design. They show a detail, but not the actual construction of it on the plan, so we need to see that. Make sure it fits. If they're putting it in the proposed detention pond and it'll be converted to a permanent detention pond, that's fine. We just need to make sure that we understand that, and the contractor understands that and can build that accordingly and meet the state standards. We need, let me borrow need a little more, maybe some spot shots along here, maybe along here. Make sure we've got the water running into the pond and not bypassing the drainage network going around here. See, usually the trucks, you usually want to turn left as you're circling the site and going counterclockwise. These are going clockwise, but that's the way they want to keep this configured. I don't have a problem with it, but it's usually when you see, retail, commercial, industrial site, they're turning left, so the driver's on the inside and can see everything accordingly. We just hope he doesn't clip a car or two in these parking lots. we don't have a requirement that they go that way, but it's just, it was a recommendation that they wanted to keep the way they've got it. Let's see. Doug had a note about tree preservation for tree credits on there, and then just some minor tweaking on that, but they, like Doug said, they have addressed most of our comments.
Staff recommendation.
I mean, we're okay with this. I think we recommend it can move forward.
Motion approved.
Second.
We have a motion and a second to approve with all staff comments. Item number 17-3002, Andrew Wildcheck Property Track 2. Other questions? All those in favor of the motion to approve, please say aye.
Aye.
Is there any opposition? Motion to approve carries. Thank you. 6D3, 17-3018, Outdoor Unlimited, conversion of 5,252 square feet existing building to non-residential equipment storage, proposed construction of 4,260 square feet carport on 2.8 acres on PUD located along Rockvale Road. Burke Skelton is the applicant. Doug.
Yes, Mr. Chairman, thank you. Again, this is another zoning application that should look familiar to you. This is along Rockvale Road. The property was rezoned to planned unit development by the Board of Commissioners back in April of this year. This was originally supposed to be on the Planning Commission's meeting last month, but was removed from the agenda due to a number of outstanding comments. The applicant's design engineer resubmitted. A lot of our comments had been addressed. We still had several that they needed to take care of, and for the most part, they have done that. A couple of outstanding items. They do need to provide an elevation on the benchmark with datum that they need on all the sheets, just for elevation purposes. Also, there's just a few details for some of the things on the plan that they need, like a concrete landing stoop, pipe bedding, diversion berm along the, I guess that'd be the northeastern property in this area right through here. But for the most part, the comments that we had have been addressed. I'll let Mike make any additional comments he may have.
Well, just some fine tuning with the detention pond, coefficients, design calculations to make sure it meets our requirements. Might borrow the mouse again, even though it doesn't like me. There's a stream buffer along here, and they've identified a lot of the trees. Even with, they do have some room this way to expand the pond if they need to. One area that they've adjusted, they've got an existing septic system here. They've identified some more soil here, but we just need to make sure that they don't get too close to their septic system when they're cutting a swale back here. Let's see what else.
Okay, so that's going to be carport.
Is the existing house or trailer to be removed?
The trailer's already gone. It's been removed, and they've removed it from the plans as well. So they're proposing parking up front, asphalt drive through here, and detention pond in the back to meet our stormwater requirements, and then they'll come on with a carport here and a carport extension here and a little additional gravel in the future. But I think the parking is what they're proposing on this phase, and they'll have to put a trash enclosure in as well. And they are, like Doug said, they are proposing a lot of vegetated screen on either side of the property and around the parking area, and they're keeping this buffer in the back along Concord Creek.
Staff okay with moving forward with this?
Yes, this is, I mean, like we said, some tweaking, but for the most part, it's in good order.
Motion to approve based on staff comments.
Thank you. We have a motion and a second to approve item 17-3018, Outdoors Unlimited. Other questions?
I have a question. It says that the closest fire hydrant is over 1,000 feet away. Are they adding a fire hydrant?
I don't think the line in that area will support it, but
it's a 4-inch line
yeah, but they'll have to work with Larry Farley, our fire chief, as far as any proper fire protection measures in the actual building itself.
Other questions? All those in favor of that motion to approve, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposition? Motion to approve item 17-3018 carries. Thank you. 64, item 17-3020, Stroop Property Building Addition, new construction of 7,500 square feet of light industrial space on 25.89 acres zoned LI located at 4700 John Bragg Highway. Robert Stroop is the applicant. Doug.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Our last site plan that we have today, the applicant is proposing to construct a 7,500 square foot building as well as some lean-to structures. It does not appear to be attached to the building. It's been confirmed that it's not. We have asked them to make several updates to the plan. Most of our comments have been addressed. One of the comments that we had is on the first page. Let me just zoom in there. They were including the, I hit the wrong button, hold on a second. There we go. They had originally included just the proposed building addition, but they weren't including the lean-to canopies and all that as far as the building size and the data. They've updated on the title page, but on the pages moving forward, they're still just showing it as the building itself. So we just asked them to update that. I mean, that's a minor change that can be done pretty quickly. This is just a master plan of the property itself, as you can see. Also, one of the other issues that we identified on the site plan, they're showing access to the adjacent property. It all kind of functions as one piece when you look at the master plan, in a sense. This is all kind of interconnected, but we'd like to see some cross-access easements between these, just so everybody knows that
in case the property ever got sold.
Right. So that the permissions are there for cross-access between these, even though there currently is cross-access. We'd like some more firm documentation on that. Some of these, we also wanted to see a truck turning template through the site just to make sure that everything was up to snuff as far as that goes. But besides that, I think Mike may have a couple of things.
We need some more information about the use of the addition. What is it going to be used for? And then the area was mostly paved and compacted gravel in the back, so there's not going to be that much of an impact of stormwater, but we just need to have the finalized calculations to make sure we're not increasing the runoff anywhere on the site. But other than that, they've addressed most of our comments.
Recommendation?
We're fine with it moving forward.
Very good.
Motion approved.
Second.
I have a motion and a second to approve item 17-2030, Stroop Property Building Addition. Any other questions? All those in favor of that motion to approve, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposition? Motion to approve carries. Thank you. We're getting under staff reports and other business. Let me just say that there's been a couple of things that have come up that we've questioned and have deferred, and staff, it looks like, has had at least 18 items on this agenda that they've had to deal with as well, and I commend you guys for dealing with such a workload and getting to us in such a manner that we can get through it in a couple of hours. So even though we've had to defer a few things, I think that you guys will agree that that's probably the right thing to do, and to come back with us with more information that we were looking for. But to work through that kind of a workload with what you have available to you is nothing but amazing. Thank you, staff. You've done a great job. Appreciate you. Discussion of fence regulations.
Well, and if we could do just a quick, just a little brief, a change of the agenda here. The floodplain regulations probably take just a minute for me to explain. If I could just knock that one out, then we could spend the rest of the time on the fence regulations. Thank you. On your screen here, you'll see just a brief explanation. The state of Tennessee, the National Floodplain Insurance Program, NFIP coordinator, Ms. Amy Miller, recently completed a community assistant visit, which is essentially an audit of the county's floodplain management procedures. Part of that audit, that CAV review, included a review of the floodplain regulations located in Chapter 10 of our zoning ordinance. Those regulations were included as part of the previous zoning resolution and were carried over pretty much as is into the current ordinance with some tweaking just for the new format that we used in the zoning ordinance. You can see the existing language here. It talks about the areas of special flood hazard identified in Rutherford County, yada, yada, yada. Kind of gives the community panel number, effective dates, and whatnot. The model floodplain ordinance, which this language, this current language was based off of, has changed, and they want to see all the different panel numbers in here and the different dates and different things that are on here. So essentially what we are doing is just proposing to make this change to the ordinance just to make it consistent with the new model. That's really all we're asking to do. This will have to go through the public hearing process as far as before the Planning Commission and Board of Commissioners, but as far as our actual procedures for floodplain review and whatnot, nothing is changing. We're really just adding all the different panel numbers into the floodplain ordinance as requested by the state's NFIP coordinator. So I'll be happy to answer any questions on that, but this is really a housekeeping amendment.
Doesn't have to go before anyone but other than us, is that
No,
what you're saying?
and the county commission. This
It
is
does-
zoning.
It does
so this
have to go
yes, sir.
before a
This
public
does have to go
hearing.
in front of the
So
county
you don't
commission
need
as
any
well.
action on us today other than questions?
Just that you're okay with it, and that we'll go ahead and put it on the next, the July night meeting.
Okay.
Motion to approve.
Okay. Have a motion to approve and a second, so this will go before a public hearing and then before the county commission also
Correct.
to approve. All those in favor of that motion to approve, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposition? Motion to approve carries. Thank you.
Okay.
I was assuming that you was putting the best to the last, so here we are with fence regulations.
We'll go with that.
Mr. Chairman,
Sir.
if I may be excused, I have a meeting I have to get to.
Several of us do, Mike, but you're excused, partner.
Duty calls.
You have me till 11 o'clock.
Move quick, Doug.
Yes, sir. Okay. Well, what we ended up doing after our last meeting, did a little more research, and we came up with this report regarding the fence regulations. This was put on the website for y'all to review. Hopefully, you had a chance to look at it. Rather than just look at the fences in the front yard, I figured we might as well look at some other issues that needed to be addressed as well. So we looked at fences in front yards, barbed wire issues, clarifying the intent division triangle, and then also including fences with utility and drainage easements. Most of the discussion, of course, has been regarding fences in the front yard. These are our current regulations. Of course, you're familiar with this diagram here. This is kind of what started the whole thing to begin with. What I ended up doing was taking a look at the different jurisdictions around this area just to kind of get an idea of what their requirements are as far as fences, and quite frankly, it was all over the map. Some of them had regulations that limited the height in front yards. Some didn't. Others said you could have them, but they had to have they couldn't be like opaque in the front yard. So what I recommended were three different alternatives. Well, anyway, I presented three different alternatives, and I made recommendations based off that. Of the three that I present here, one of them is allow fence up to 8 feet along all property lines, which we currently allow in the, we currently allow up to 8 feet except in the front yards. I like the approach of fences on 8 feet along all property lines just because it's simple, it's easy to enforce, and it's consistent. I understand that there are issues with that, and I'll present what I think is a recommendation for that here in just a minute. A second issue would be allow property owners to build an 8-foot privacy fence as far as the front of their adjacent homes on either side. That was something that we were kind of floating around over our last meeting or two. After looking at this in more detail, however, I don't think this is going to be an effective solution. While it works really well if you have postage lots right next to each other, like on the diagram that's in this report, it doesn't work so well when you look at cul-de-sac lots, corner lots, things like that. It ends up causing more issues than it solves after really looking at that. Also, I think there's an aesthetic issue with that as well, as far as you've got some fences that go here, this fence comes here, this one's way back here. In my mind, it just doesn't function that well. The third item was allow 8-foot fences in front yards, but require them to be transparent. Gallatin was one of the ones that I kind of liked, that allows the fences in the front yards up to 4 feet in height, but it does require them to be no greater than 50% opaque. This would mean that like a wrought iron fence or a picket fence or split rail, something like that would be permitted, but a privacy fence would not. So what I'm recommending is in residential districts, you would allow fences up to 8 feet in height to be constructed on all property lines, with the exception of the front. Now, this would be a privacy type fence. Beyond the front, so this would be the front setback, not necessarily where the front of the house is. So it would be consistent to the effect that they could build it all the way to what the front setback is, an 8-foot privacy fence all the way to the front setback, which is 40 feet in most residential districts. Beyond that point, you would allow the fences in the front setback, but require some level of transparency. As an alternative, you could actually list specific types, such as a split rail or a picket fence. In commercial industrial districts, again, I just recommend eliminating the language that was repetitive, as we had talked about. When it comes to barbed wire, you'll see that fences constructed primarily are topped with barbed wire, razor wire, or concertina form, unless they're serving a public institution for public safety or special services, are not permitted. However, when we really got to looking at how this is applied, commercial establishments or even used property will sometimes place barbed wire atop of security fences for added security. We see this especially with cell towers. A lot of times they'll have a 6-foot fence and then they'll top it with a foot of barbed wire. That's not uncommon. What I would recommend is to allow barbed wire fences for non-residentially zoned or used property, but keep the restriction for residentially used property. The vision triangle, this is something else we had talked about. It talks about fences or walls, vegetation interfere with clear vision at or near public or private street, alley, et cetera, et cetera. This provision is alluding to what we define as the vision triangle. We specifically define this in our zoning ordinance, and we just want to clarify that just to say the vision triangle and be done with it. The last deals with fences and utilities and drainage easements. It's understood that fences are not permitted in utility or drainage easements, but after looking through our regulations, there really is no explicit language to that effect. So what we're proposing, and the last page or two you see is a recommendations overview. We propose adding this in here: fences shall not be permitted in utility easements unless approved by the utility provider in writing, and then fences shall not be permitted in drainage easements without the written consent of the county engineer. As far as the vision triangle is concerned, you can see we just changed the language around to just put i.e. vision triangle as defined by this ordinance. Everything else was left alone. For the barbed wire, again, we just changed the language, non-residentially zoned property or uses and or serving public institutions. So you could use it in those situations, but again, not just residentially zoned or used properties. The biggest changes have to deal, again, with the fences in the front yard. And you'll see with the proposed language that we recommend is that, in any residential district, no fence or wall shall exceed 8 feet in height in side and rear yards. Fences in front yards may be 8 feet in height, provided that fences within the required front yard, which is the setback, be of transparent construction, i.e. split rail, picket, chain link, etc. And then we just made the other changes as we had previously discussed. After looking at that, we feel that's the best solution. I'm more than happy to hear whatever other comments that you all may have on that.
Doug, the guy's built his fence in the front, and we're 8 feet, but with some transparency in that fence on the very front. That's his fence. That keeps the dog in. That's his fence. He steps back 15, 20 feet. He builds him a privacy fence. That's just a privacy. It's not a fence. Don't go from touch it. A fence, I assume, I don't know the definition of a fence, but it touches all the way around. It keeps the dog from going out. He steps back 15, 20 feet, builds him a shorter privacy something. What are you going to call that? Is that going to be a fence, or is that, what is that?
Green.
Yeah, I mean, I guess it would be probably some sort of
fence.
fence.
I mean, it's not a fence as such. It's something for privacy. What he wanted all along, but he sort of goes around. He still got his privacy fence. Mm-hmm. We can't call it a fence, so.
Yeah, Craig, I'll be honest, I hadn't really considered that. I don't know what we would call that. I mean, it's still acting as some sort of a privacy screen or a fence of some sort. So in my mind, as long as it wasn't within the front setback, I don't know if there'd be a whole lot we could say about it. And based on that's even today.
Yeah, I mean,
based on our
that's one of those
regulations
loopholes,
today.
like
Yeah.
the PUD a while ago, and we didn't say what size the buildings would be, so it was sort of a loophole. I know you can't think of everything.
Right. Well, and I was actually thinking that. I'm like, I don't know if I'd ever be able to craft a regulation that takes into account every possibility that comes in.
If we're trying to deter privacy fences in front of a guy's house.
Mm-hmm.
So he builds this fence and he steps back and he still has his privacy fence.
Yeah, because I mean, even based off this language, as long as he wasn't in the front setback, he could put some sort of a privacy screen across his front.
Yeah.
Based on what we've got. what we're proposing anyway.
Yeah, they could go to the creek bank, dig up enough privet, give it a few years.
Oh,
and-
yeah.
And call it landscaping.
20
you
minutes.
know. And achieve the same end.
Exactly.
What do you need from us?
Well, if you're okay with this, then we would put it on our next agenda for a public hearing, because this would have to go through the same process like the floodplain regulations we just talked about. Planning Commission public hearing, Board of Commissioners public hearing.
I see some, Mr. Chairman, I see some confusing language. It still addresses fences in front yards. So that's the whole front yard. I mean, it's from the front of the house out, right? Would have to be transparent?
From the front setback, not
Well,
the front, not the
it
front of the
doesn't-
house. Now, if the front of the house happens to be sitting on the front setback, then yeah.
Does it?
But fences in front, the required front yard, which is the front setback, that 40 feet from the front property line.
Okay, so you're addressing from the house out or from the setback out has to be transparent.
From the setback
It's 8
going to
feet
the
tall.
road, basically, yes.
What if it's 4 feet tall?
That's fine. It can be, I mean, you're allowed up to 8 feet. You're allowed up to 8 feet. I mean, yeah, as far as the transparency, right, as far as the transparency is concerned, it would have to be transparent regardless of how high it was, based on the language we've gotten here.
And that would include, would a chain link fence that was 8 feet tall be
That's
considered-
transparent.
It would be considered transparent?
Yes, sir, it would.
Woven wire, whatever.
Right. Woven wires, split rail, picket, anything like that.
I know we've wrestled and wrestled. I don't like the idea of an 8-foot chain link fence in front of somebody's house. I don't have a better suggestion. I don't have any ideas on ways to craft this in such a way that I'm trying to visualize what that would look like. I don't know. I just imagine driving down the road and seeing an 8-foot chain link fence. I don't see that as being.
There are some.
Looks like it's a warehouse.
There's some folks that
Yeah.
build mansions. I mean, they're huge, great big houses, and they put brick all the
Oh,
way
yeah.
down the front of the house.
Mhm.
Would this violate that?
Yeah, as written, it would.
They would be able to get a variance?
Oh, yeah. I mean, you could always ask for a variance to that, yes, sir.
So anything we put, you could go
To the Board of Zoning Appeals.
and
Yes,
ask
sir.
for some kind of variance.
You could.
So if somebody had a hardship where they needed an 8-foot chain link fence, they could still get one.
Well,
There's
that-
an additional fee to ask
Well,
for that.
yeah, I mean, based on the language, they could do an 8-foot fence.
No, I meant
Yeah.
if we took that out, if we made that
Oh,
change.
if you took that out, then yes,
They
then
could
you
get
could
it,
do
but
that.
there'd be a fee, they'd have to, the
Correct.
process they'd have to go through.
Right.
It's just to have something to take for the public and get input. Are we gonna get any better than this? Who knows, huh?
We can always tweak it some more. I mean,
I'll make a proposal that we go with this, send it for a public hearing.
Will and Mike
There
can ought to have a
there are
comment.
variances available, and 2 years from now, we'll revisit it if we've made a mistake, because I think y'all spent enough time as much as there is going on.
Will
Done
and
a
Mike
good
can have a
job.
comment at that next meeting.
Yeah, there'll be a comment, yeah.
well, and I will say this, like in the city of where I live, inside the city limits, when you look at that report, Murfreesboro doesn't have any regulations as far as basically the fence height is allowed to be whatever the height of the district is. So you could have a 35-foot fence if you wanted to. Nobody does that.
Yeah.
I mean, I can only think of a handful of the brick, like you were talking about, the brick wall in front of a large man. There's one on Cason Lane that recently did that. There's one on Warrior Drive that I know about that did that. There are just not that many of them out there.
I agree, but still, if someone wanted to do that, they could get a variance to do that.
Yes,
In
they
all
could.
probability, the way those things would be designed, the variance would be pretty easy to get, in my mind. You're also gonna have issues that are really uncommon, and I don't know how you can address for all of those things. Somebody may want to put a swimming pool in their front yard versus in their backyard, and they're gonna have to have some.
They can't do that unless they get a variance. There actually is a regulation in the code about that.
But that, somebody may want to do that
Right,
because
right.
that's where it belongs,
yeah.
on that piece of
Right,
property,
yeah.
So you guys okay with taking this before the public and getting input from the public, and then we can make further adjustments as need be?
Oh, yeah, and if, in the interim, between now and the next meeting, if you all have specific comments after really looking into this a little bit more, just let me know. I mean, this is a work in progress. If we need to tweak the report, we can tweak it and then bring it to the meeting as tweaked, and then discuss it from that point. So more than happy to do that.
I'm gonna make a motion, we bring this to the next night meeting for a public hearing and see if we can't put this behind us for a while anyway.
Have a motion and a second. Other discussion?
I just have one suggestion. Would you make a point to reach out to the rural commissioners and let them see this ahead of time? Because I don't want us to do this and then by the time it gets to the full commission, we start all over again.
Mm-hmm.
So, because this is primarily who that's going to affect are those rural commissioners.
It's a good point. That
And make sure they understand it'll apply to subdivisions only.
They'll apply to what now? Say again?
Subdivisions, you know.
Okay, well, this will apply everywhere, not just subdivisions.
It will.
Yeah, this is everywhere.
And maybe that's where we need to clarify, because my intentions was this only for subdivisions. You get out in rural areas, acre, 2, 3. No, this to me is not an issue. It's to me.
You might stir up a hornet's nest.
To me, my intentions were to be more toward subdivisions, not
platted subdivisions.
Platted subdivisions, not across the board.
Can we do it in a manner that allows it only to apply to platted subdivisions?
But then you're talking 5 lots or more. You're talking about how many off of a private easement when they come in stages. I mean,
When you,
Whatever
when you
gets
get into those
recorded as a
larger,
plat.
when you get into those larger acreage, they're not going to put a fence all the way around.
Right.
But it's the small farms like that are fall under the new RM that are still functioning as a small little horse farm or something like that. Might need the barbed wire or something like
They're
that
not
along
gonna
the
have an
top. So,
8-foot.
right.
They're going to use woven wire anyway.
Woven
Yeah,
with a
see
barbed
if-
wire top.
Agricultural would be exempt anyway.
Yeah,
wouldn't it?
agricultural is exempt. Yeah, for ag
Agricultural
uses.
uses.
Yeah, those are already
Don't
exempt.
necessarily be
Correct.
agricultural
Uses, right? Because agricultural uses are permitted in residential
You know,
zones, so
this
they're
zoning may be a
right.
RM
They're
again.
specifically exempt, really, from most zoning requirements.
You
And I will
send-
say
if
that
you
our
send this to the rural commissioners, then
Yes.
stress, if you would, stress that in some kind of language.
Yeah, we can do that.
It won't affect agriculture, and I think everybody will be good with it.
And I will say that our current fence regulations are not specific to subdivisions, they're countywide, so.
And the material that they're built out of is still listed?
Yes, we're not proposing to change that.
Is electric fences still in there?
I believe it is. I'd have to double check, but I'm almost positive there's something in there about electric fences, yes.
You don't have anything going before the county commission tomorrow?
No,
Tomorrow at the annual meeting?
Just the over budget rate, no, sir.
Okay, it may be good that somehow there be a communication come out even this month, first of next month, about the August meeting. There'll could be some information coming out on this, and just start the process of communicating with those guys. You know, it's a two-edged sword, and I'm wanting to get out of here myself. I've missed my tea time by 30 minutes already. I'm being facetious, you guys, but this two-edged sword, you could have someone that says, I'm a property owner, I want to put up that fence, and you're violating my property rights. You got the person sitting next door that says, you're making things in our community ugly and it shouldn't be there. So you got two differences of opinion, and we're not going to be able to meet everybody's needs. So what we're trying to do is to come up with something that satisfies most of the people as many times as we possibly can. And the number of times this kind of thing's going to come up is probably going to be so few that we're not going to have to deal with it a lot. But you're not going to be able to please everybody. There's no way for that to happen. Okay, we have a motion and a second to send it before the public for discussion. All those in favor of that motion, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposition? Motion carries. Doug, we're done?
As far as I'm concerned.
It was a good day. Thank you for your attention and your participation. Good to see you, Mr. Stroop. We're adjourned.
They got a variance in the